Dad, what does sloppy seconds mean? My 8-year-old son Ben asked this over his Lucky Charms, milk dripping from his spoon, while my wife Elena scrolled through her phone at the kitchen island. The question hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. I'm Nick Callahan, 38 years old, owner of Callahan Construction. I build things, I fix things. I thought I had built a solid marriage, but apparently I'd been fixing the wrong problems. Elena didn't even look up from her phone. Her perfectly manicured fingers kept scrolling, her blonde hair catching the morning light streaming through our Woodland Hills kitchen window. She wore a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Where did you hear that, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ben shrugged, the way kids do when they're repeating something they don't understand. "Mom was talking to Aunt Maya on the phone last night. She said you were her sloppy seconds." The spoon fell from my hand, clattering against my coffee mug. Elena's scrolling stopped. For just a moment, the kitchen fell silent except for the hum of our stainless steel refrigerator. "Ben, go brush your teeth," Elena said, her voice sharp. "You'll be late for school." After Ben disappeared upstairs, I stared at my wife of 10 years. She was still beautiful, still the woman who'd walked into my construction office 7 years ago claiming she needed a contractor for her PR consulting business. Still the woman who'd convinced me to buy this house in the hills, to upgrade our lifestyle, to trust her with our finances. Sloppy seconds, Elena? Really? She finally looked up, her green eyes cold as winter. "You were eavesdropping on a private conversation. Our 8-year-old son was eavesdropping. I'm just trying to figure out why my wife thinks so little of me." Elena stood, tightening her robe. "Don't be dramatic, Nick. It was just girl talk with Maya. You know how sisters are." I knew Maya, Elena's younger sister. 26, always dressed like she was heading to a nightclub, always whispering with Elena about their business ventures. Maya lived in a Century City condo that cost more than most people's houses, despite having no visible job. "Girl talk," I repeated, "about your husband being your sloppy seconds. You're overreacting." But I wasn't overreacting, I was finally reacting. For months, I'd noticed the changes. Elena's late nights, her new clients, her sudden interest in expensive lingerie that I never saw her wear at home. The way she'd started looking at me like I was an inconvenience, a piece of furniture she'd outgrown. After Elena left for her morning meeting, I did something I'd never done before. I followed her. My F-150 stayed 3 cars behind her white BMW as she drove through Malibu Canyon. She wasn't heading to any office building. She pulled into the circular driveway of a massive modern mansion perched on a hillside, all glass and steel and money. I parked on the street and watched through binoculars I kept in my truck for surveying job sites. Elena walked to the front door like she owned the place. Maya's red Porsche was already in the driveway, along with several other expensive cars. This wasn't a business meeting. This was something else entirely. I waited an hour, then decided to get closer. The property had security cameras, but I'd installed enough of them to know their blind spots. I scaled the sidewall, dropping into perfectly manicured landscaping. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see into a living room that looked like something from a magazine. Elena and Maya were there with 3 other women I didn't recognize. They weren't alone. 5 men in expensive suits sat around like they were holding court. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see the body language. The way the women positioned themselves, the way the men looked at them, the way money changed hands. This wasn't a business meeting. This was a transaction. I was pulling out my phone to record when a hand grabbed my shoulder. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Security guard, built like a linebacker, wearing a black suit. I'd been so focused on the window that I had missed him on his rounds. "You were just trespassing. Move!" He grabbed my arm. But I've been in construction for 20 years. My arms are stronger than they look. I twisted away and ran. The guard shouted into his radio as I sprinted across the lawn. Behind me, I heard more voices, more footsteps. I reached the wall and hauled myself over, scraping my hands on the concrete. My truck started on the first try, and I was gone before they could get the license plate. But I'd seen enough. That evening, Elena came home at 7, claiming she'd been at client meetings all day. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, asked about Ben's homework, discussed dinner plans. "How was your day?" she asked, the picture of domestic innocence. "Interesting," I said. "Learned some new things about the service industry." Her smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. After dinner, after Ben was in bed, I sat in my home office and thought about what I'd witnessed. Elena wasn't just cheating on me. She was running some kind of operation, and Maya was helping her. I opened Elena's laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, still logged in. Usually, she was careful about that. Her email was a goldmine. Encrypted messages about appointments and clients, references to the girls and the service. A folder labeled medical that contained STD test results for Elena and 4 other women. All negative, thankfully, but dated just 2 weeks ago. My hands shook as I scrolled through more emails. There were photos, schedules, and payment records. Elena wasn't just participating in whatever this was, she was organizing it. The final email in the chain was from someone named Calvin Royce. The subject line read, "Your husband problem. Elena, we need to discuss your domestic situation. The client base is nervous about security. Maya mentioned he's been asking questions. This needs to be handled before it becomes an issue for everyone involved. Call me." I screenshot everything and forwarded it to my personal email before closing the laptop. My wife wasn't just calling me sloppy seconds behind my back. She was discussing me as a problem that needed to be handled. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in the dark, processing what I'd learned. Elena was running an escort service for wealthy clients. She was making serious money doing it, and now she saw me as a threat to her operation. The woman I'd married, the mother of my son, had turned our life into a lie. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated her sloppy seconds. I spent the next hour researching Calvin Royce. He was a Hollywood producer with 3 ex-wives and a reputation for throwing parties that made the tabloids. Rich, connected, and apparently Elena's problem solver. By midnight, I had a plan. If Elena wanted to play games with wealthy, powerful men, she was about to learn that her blue-collar husband knew how to play too. The next morning, I called in sick to my job site and drove to O'Malley's, a dive bar in Van Nuys where contractors and cops drink before noon without judgment. I needed to talk to Vic Torino. Vic was a retired LAPD detective who'd hired me 3 years ago to renovate his kitchen after his divorce. We'd bonded over shared stories of wives who'd turned out to be different people than we'd married. His ex-wife had cleaned out their joint accounts and moved to Vegas with her personal trainer. I found him at his usual spot at the end of the bar, nursing a beer and reading the sports section. "Nick Callahan," he said without looking up. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too. I need advice, Vic, the kind you don't give to just anybody." He folded his paper and really looked at me. Vic had cop eyes, the kind that saw everything. "What kind of trouble are we talking about?" I told him everything. The conversation with Ben, following Elena, the emails, the mansion, Calvin Royce. Vic listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure about what you saw? Dead sure? And you've got proof?" I showed him the screenshots on my phone. Vic studied them, his expression getting darker. "This Calvin Royce guy, I know that name. He's been investigated twice for running high-end escort operations. Nothing stuck but cops talk. He's connected, careful, and dangerous when cornered." "What would you do?" Vic finished his beer. "Officially, I'd tell you to gather evidence and call the police. Unofficially, I'd tell you that the rich guys like this have lawyers who eat working-class husbands for breakfast. You need leverage, not just evidence." "What kind of leverage?" "The kind that comes from understanding you're not the only husband dealing with this problem." That's when Vic told me about Miguel Santos and Dr. James Lee. Miguel was a successful real estate developer whose wife Carmen had been acting suspicious for months. Dr. Lee was a cardiologist whose wife Susan had suddenly developed an interest in girls' nights and expensive jewelry. Both guys have been asking around, trying to figure out what their wives are up to. Sounds like they might be dealing with the same operation you are. Vic made some calls. 2 hours later, we were sitting in a back booth at O'Malley's with Miguel and Dr. Lee, comparing notes. Miguel was in his 40s, well-dressed but tired-looking. He pulled out his phone and showed us photos he'd taken of Carmen leaving the same Malibu mansion I'd seen Elena visit. "I hired a private investigator," Miguel said. "Cost me $5,000, and all he could tell me was that my wife visits this house twice a week and comes home with more money than she should have." Dr. Lee was quieter, more analytical. He'd been tracking his wife's spending and schedule. "Susan has been depositing large cash amounts into a separate account. When I asked about it, she said she'd been doing consulting work for a friend's business. What kind of consulting? I asked. She wouldn't say, but she's been buying lingerie, getting expensive treatments, and taking classes. What kind of classes? Dr. Lee looked uncomfortable. Massage therapy, and something she called client relations. The pieces were falling into place. Elena, Carmen, and Susan were all part of the same operation, along with Maya and whoever else Calvin Royce was managing. So what do we do about it? Miguel asked. Vic leaned forward. You have 3 choices. Walk away and pretend you don't know. Report it to the police and hope something sticks. Or you handle it yourselves. Handle it how? Dr. Lee asked. You make it not worth their while to continue. You expose the operation in a way that destroys their client base and their reputation. You make them understand that crossing working husbands was the biggest mistake they ever made. Miguel nodded slowly. I'm listening. What did you have in mind? I asked. Vic smiled, and for the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. We're going to give these ladies exactly what they deserve, but we're going to be smart about it. No violence, nothing illegal that can come back on you. Just good old-fashioned consequences. Over the next 2 hours, we planned our approach. Dr. Lee would use his medical connections to verify the STD testing and find out which clinic was being used. Miguel would use his real estate contacts to research the Malibu mansion and find out who owned it. Vic would tap his police connections to build a file on Calvin Royce. My job was the most dangerous. I was going to get inside that mansion and document what was happening. You sure about this? Vic asked as we prepared to leave. Once you start down this road, there's no going back. Your marriage is over either way. But this path makes sure it ends on your terms. I thought about Ben asking what sloppy seconds meant. I thought about Elena discussing me as a problem that needed to be handled. I thought about 10 years of marriage that had apparently been a lie. I'm sure. That night I sat in my truck outside the Malibu mansion watching the comings and goings. Elena's BMW arrived at 7. Maya's Porsche was already there. Over the next hour, I counted 6 other expensive cars arriving. At 9 o'clock, I made my move. This time I was prepared. I'd brought proper surveillance equipment from my construction office, including a camera with a telephoto lens and a directional microphone. I'd also brought bolt cutters, in case I needed to create an exit route. I approached from the canyon side, where the property backed up to undeveloped land. The security was lighter back there, probably because they figured nobody would climb up from the ravine. They were wrong. It took me 20 minutes to work my way up the hillside and reach the back wall of the property. From there, I could see directly into the main living area, through the floor-to-ceiling windows. What I saw made my stomach turn. Elena was there, along with Maya and 4 other women I didn't recognize. They were dressed in expensive lingerie and high heels, moving around a group of older men in suits. The men were drinking, laughing, and clearly enjoying themselves. But this wasn't just a party. I watched Elena lead one of the men toward a hallway. Maya did the same with another. The transaction was clear, even if I couldn't hear the details. I started recording everything. 20 minutes later, Elena returned to the main room. She was adjusting her hair and reapplying lipstick. The man she'd been with handed her an envelope. I kept recording as the evening continued. Different women, different men, the same pattern. Maya seemed to be managing the logistics, keeping track of schedules and payments. Around 11, I saw Calvin Royce arrive. He was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, silver-haired, expensive suit, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. He didn't participate in the activities. Instead, he moved through the room like a manager, speaking quietly with Maya and occasionally checking his phone. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Second time's the charm, asshole. The same security guard from before, but this time he'd brought friends. 2 other guys in black suits, all of them looking like they enjoyed their work. You're going to come with us, the first guard said. Mr. Royce wants to have a conversation. I had 2 choices. Go quietly and hope I could talk my way out, or run and probably get caught anyway. I chose option 3. I'd positioned myself near the property's irrigation system, a network of pipes and sprinkler heads that I'd noticed during my approach. I grabbed the main valve and twisted it open. Water erupted from dozens of sprinkler heads across the back lawn, soaking everyone within 50 feet. The security guards cursed and stumbled in the sudden downpour. I ran. This time, I didn't head for the wall. Instead, I sprinted toward the house, where the chaos of the sprinkler system had drawn attention from inside. People were shouting, lights were coming on, and in the confusion, nobody was watching the front gate. I made it to my truck and was gone before they organized a proper search. But I had what I needed. Hours of video showing Elena and the other women in compromising situations with identifiable men. Evidence of money changing hands. Proof of an organized operation. More importantly, I had Calvin Royce on camera, clearly managing the whole thing. When I got home, Elena was already there, claiming she'd been at a client dinner that ran late. She was showered and changed, no sign of the evening's activities. "How was your evening?" she asked, the perfect picture of innocent concern. "Educational," I said. "I'm learning a lot about client services these days." Again, that flicker in her eyes. She was starting to suspect something, but she couldn't be sure. "Nick, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Just work stress," I lied. "Big project coming up. Lots of moving parts to coordinate." She seemed to accept that, but I noticed she took her laptop with her when she went to bed. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, editing the video footage and preparing my next move. Elena had spent 10 years lying to me, but she was about to learn that her sloppy seconds had been paying attention. The next day was Ben's 9th birthday party. Elena had planned it weeks ago. Family barbecue in our backyard, relatives coming from across the city. My parents, her parents, Maya, assorted aunts and uncles and cousins. It was the perfect opportunity. I spent the morning preparing, not just the barbecue, but my strategy. I'd edited the surveillance footage down to a 5-minute compilation that showed Elena and Maya's operation without being explicitly pornographic. Damning, but not obscene. I'd also printed out some of the email exchanges, including Calvin Royce's message about my being a problem that needed to be handled. The party started at 2. By 3, everyone was there, including Maya in a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. She kept checking her phone and whispering with Alana. Ben was having a great time, running around with his cousins, opening presents, being a normal 9-year-old kid. I watched him and felt my resolve harden. He deserved better than this. He deserved a family built on truth, not lies and money from God knows where. At 4 o'clock, just as we were bringing out the birthday cake, Maya's phone rang. She answered it, spoke quietly for a moment, then grabbed Elena's arm. "We need to go," she said. "There's a problem with the Henderson appointment." Elena looked frustrated. "Can it wait? It's Ben's party." "No, it can't wait. Mr. Royce is already upset about the security issues. We can't afford another problem." That's when I made my move. "Security issues?" I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What kind of security issues?" Maya froze. Elena's face went pale. "It's nothing," Elena said quickly. "Just work stuff." Maya's being dramatic. "Work stuff," I repeated. "Your PR consulting work?" "Yes." I pulled out my phone and opened the video file. Funny thing about PR consulting. I always thought it involved press releases and media management, but apparently it involves a lot more personal service than I realized. Elena saw the phone in my hand and understood immediately. "Nick, don't." "Don't what? Don't share your professional accomplishments with the family?" "Come on, Elena. You've been working so hard, and everyone should see how successful you've become." The backyard had gone quiet. 25 relatives, all sensing drama but not understanding what kind. "Nick," my father said, "maybe this isn't the time." "Actually, Dad, this is exactly the time. See, I've been doing some research into Elena's business. Very educational. For instance, did you know that Elena's been regularly tested for sexually transmitted diseases?" Elena's mother gasped. Maya started moving toward the back gate. "That's right," I continued, pulling out the printed emails. "Monthly STD panels for Elena and her associates. Very thorough. Very professional. Though I have to wonder why a PR consultant needs that level of medical monitoring." "Stop it," Elena hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself." I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Elena, I know about the mansion. I know about Calvin Royce. I know about the clients and the appointments and the money. I know everything." Maya had reached the gate, but Victorino was there, waiting for her. I'd called him that morning and asked him to attend the party as my guest. He was blocking her exit, smiling politely. "Going somewhere, Maya?" Vic asked. Party's just getting started. Elena looked around the backyard, seeing the faces of her family and friends, all staring at her with growing understanding and horror. You don't understand, she said desperately. It's not what you think. Really? Then explain it. Explain the mansion, the clients, the envelopes full of cash. Explain why Calvin Royce considers me a problem that needs to be handled. I held up the printed email. That's right, everyone. My wife has been discussing me with her business associates. Apparently, I'm a threat to their operation. Elena's father, a quiet man who'd worked in insurance his whole life, stood up from his lawn chair. Elena, what is Nick talking about? Before she could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. What's all the shouting about? Troy Barron had just walked through the side gate, carrying a wrapped present and wearing the kind of casual clothes that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He was 32, ran a tech startup, and according to the emails I'd found, was Elena's favorite client. The backyard went dead silent. Troy, Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. You shouldn't be here. You invited me, he said, confused. Said it was Ben's birthday party, and I should stop by. Then he looked around at the faces staring at him and began to understand that he'd walked into something. Actually, I said, this is perfect. Everyone, meet Troy Barron. He's one of Elena's clients. Troy, meet Elena's family. They're just learning about her career change. Troy's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You're the guy who's been paying my wife for personal services. You're also the guy who's been helping her hide money and plan her exit strategy. I pulled out my phone again. I've got video, Troy, hours of it. You, Elena, the mansion, the money, all very well documented. Troy started backing toward the gate, but Dr. Lee was there now, having arrived as planned. Leaving so soon? Dr. Lee asked politely. We haven't been introduced. I'm James Lee. My wife Susan works with Elena. The trap was closing. Maya blocked by Vic, Troy blocked by Dr. Lee, Elena surrounded by her own family, all of them starting to understand what they were hearing. Ben, my 9-year-old son, was standing near the picnic table with chocolate cake on his fingers, looking confused and scared. Dad, he said, what's happening? That's when Elena made her last desperate play. You want to know what's happening, Ben? She said, her voice rising. Your father's been spying on me, following me, breaking into private property. He's been harassing my friends and business associates. He's having some kind of breakdown. Breakdown? I laughed again. Elena, I found out my wife is a courtesan. If that's not grounds for a breakdown, I don't know what is. Elena's mother started crying. Her father looked like he might have a heart attack. My own parents were staring at me like I'd grown a second head, but I wasn't done. You want to talk about harassment, Elena? Let's talk about your friend Calvin Royce and his plans to handle me. Let's talk about the security guards who've been following me. Let's talk about the threats. Troy tried to make a run for it, pushing past Dr. Lee and heading for the front yard. I caught him at the gate. Where are you going, Troy? Don't you want to explain to everyone how you've been screwing my wife for money? He swung at me. Big mistake. I've been in construction for 20 years. I've been in bar fights, job site disputes, and confrontations with guys twice Troy's size. He was soft, rich, and had probably never been punched in his life. I hit him once, a solid right cross that dropped him on my front lawn in front of God and everybody. That's for my son. Come on, I said, standing over him. That's for every night you were in my house while he was sleeping upstairs. Troy was bleeding from his nose, crying, trying to crawl away. Elena was screaming. Maya was trying to call someone on her phone. The entire party had erupted into chaos. That's when the police arrived. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing. Someone had called 911, probably one of the neighbors who'd heard the shouting. As the officers approached, I realized this was either the end of my plan or the beginning of something bigger. Elena ran to the first officer. Thank God you're here. My husband has been stalking me, threatening me and my friends. He just attacked this man for no reason. The officer looked at Troy, who was still bleeding on my lawn, then at me. Sir, is this your property? Yes, it is. This is my house, my party. And that man was uninvited. He's lying, Elena said. I invited Troy. Nick attacked him because he's having a mental breakdown. The officer looked around at the assembled crowd. 25 relatives, all looking shocked and confused. Maya trying to disappear into the background. Troy bleeding and crying. Elena playing the sufferer. Okay, the officer said. Everyone calm down. Let's sort this out one at a time. That's when Victorino stepped forward and showed his retired LAPD badge. Officer, I'm retired LAPD. I've been investigating this situation for several days. You might want to see what Mr. Callahan has uncovered. I handed over my phone with the video evidence and the printed emails. The officer watched for about 30 seconds, then called for backup. Within an hour, my backyard was a crime scene. Not because of anything I'd done, but because of what Elena had been doing. Maya was arrested on outstanding warrants that Vic had discovered. Troy was taken to the hospital and then questioned about his involvement in the escort operation. Elena was read her rights and taken away in handcuffs. As the police cars pulled away, I stood in my ruined backyard with my traumatized son and my devastated family, watching my marriage disappear forever. Ben looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Dad, is Mom coming back? I knelt down and hugged him. I don't know, buddy, but I promise you everything's gonna be okay. It was the first honest thing anyone had said in my house in months. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a downtown LA courtroom watching my wife's world collapse in real time. The investigation that started with my surveillance footage had exploded into something much bigger. Calvin Royce's operation involved dozens of women, hundreds of clients, and millions of dollars. The FBI had taken over from the LAPD. And suddenly, Elena wasn't just facing local charges. She was looking at federal time. I'd hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in protecting the families of people caught up in sex trafficking cases. Elena's lawyer kept trying to paint me as an abusive husband who'd driven his wife to desperate measures. But the evidence was overwhelming. The video footage I'd collected was just the beginning. Once the FBI started digging, they found financial records, client lists, and a paper trail that went back 3 years. Elena hadn't just been participating in Royce's operation, she'd been one of his top recruiters. Maya had flipped immediately, providing testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. According to her statement, Elena had recruited at least 12 other women, including Dr. Lee's wife Susan and Miguel's wife Carmen. The courtroom was packed with reporters, law enforcement officials, and family members of the women involved. I sat in the back, watching Elena at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd kissed me goodbye every morning for 10 years. Ben was staying with my parents while all this played out. He was in therapy, trying to process what had happened to his family. The therapist said he was resilient, that kids adapt, but I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes every time I picked him up for our visits. Mr. Callahan? I looked up to see Assistant District Attorney Maria Santos approaching. She'd been the prosecutor handling Elena's case, a tough woman in her 40s who didn't seem impressed by anyone's sob story. The judge wants to see you in chambers, she said. There's been a development. I followed her through a side door into the judge's private office. Judge Harrison was a stern-looking man in his 60s who'd been handling high-profile criminal cases for decades. Mr. Callahan, he said, I understand you've been cooperating fully with law enforcement throughout this investigation. Yes, sir. I also understand that you've received threats from associates of Mr. Royce's organization. That was true. Since Elena's arrest, I'd been contacted twice by people who wanted me to recant my testimony or withdraw my evidence. The FBI had given me a security consultation and advised me to vary my routines. The reason I asked you here, Judge Harrison continued, is that Mr. Royce's attorney has made an unusual request. He wants to meet with you directly. I looked at ADA Santos. Is that normal? No, she said, but given the circumstances, we think it might be beneficial. Royce is facing life in prison. He might be willing to provide information about other operations, other sufferers, in exchange for consideration. What does that have to do with me? You're the one who broke this open, Judge Harrison said. Your evidence started the investigation that brought down his entire network. He respects that. He wants to talk to you man to man. An hour later, I was sitting across from Calvin Royce in a secure conference room at the federal courthouse. He was smaller than I'd expected, wearing a rumpled suit and looking every one of his 56 years. Nick Callahan, he said, extending his hand. I have to admit, I underestimated you. I didn't shake his hand. You tried to have me killed. No, he said, sitting back down. I tried to have you discouraged. There's a difference. If I'd wanted you dead, you'd be dead. The FBI agent in the room shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. So what do you want? I asked. I want to make you an offer. I'm going to prison, probably for the rest of my life. But I have information that could help other families like yours. Other husbands who don't know what their wives are doing. In exchange for what? I want you to know that Elena volunteered for everything. Nobody forced her. Nobody coerced her. She came to me with the idea of expanding the operation, bringing in more women, making more money. She was ambitious, Mr. Callahan. More ambitious than you ever knew. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because you have a son, and someday he's going to ask you questions about his mother. You should know the truth before you decide how to answer. Royce leaned forward. Elena didn't just participate in the escort service. She created most of it. The recruitment methods, the client screening, the security protocols. She was my business partner, not my employee. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are financial records showing Elena's take from the operation. Over the past 3 years, she made $2.3 million, money that she hid from you, from the IRS, from everyone. I opened the folder and saw bank statements, investment accounts, and property records. Elena had been living a completely separate financial life. There's more, Royce said. Elena was planning to leave you. She'd already put a down payment on a house in Cabo San Lucas. She was going to take Ben and disappear. The FBI agent spoke up. Mr. Royce, this information wasn't part of our agreement. I'm not asking for anything in return, Royce said. I'm just telling Mr. Callahan the truth. He deserves to know what kind of woman he was married to. I closed the folder and looked at Royce. Why should I believe you? Because you're smart enough to verify everything I just told you. The bank records are real. The property in Mexico is real. The timeline is real. Elena was going to destroy your life and take your son, and you would never have seen it coming. I stood up to leave, but Royce had one more thing to say. Mr. Callahan? You did the right thing. A lot of men would have just walked away, pretended they didn't see what they saw. You fought for your family. You should be proud of that. 3 months later, Elena was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Maya got 5 years. Troy Barron, who'd been helping launder money through his tech company, got 7 years. Calvin Royce got life without parole. I was awarded full custody of Ben, along with access to Elena's hidden assets to pay for his education and therapy. The house in Cabo was sold, along with Elena's other investments, generating enough money to secure Ben's future. On the day Elena was transferred to federal prison, she asked to see me one last time. We met in a small room at the courthouse, separated by a plexiglass barrier. She looked older, tired, defeated. I'm sorry, Nick, she said through the phone. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am sorry. Sorry for what, Elena? Sorry you got caught? Sorry you destroyed our family? Sorry you were planning to kidnap my son and disappear to Mexico? She looked genuinely surprised. How did you know about Mexico? Calvin Royce told me. Right before he explained how the whole operation was your idea. Elena's face crumpled. That's not true. It was his operation. You just what? You just recruited other women? You just managed the finances? You just planned to steal my son and run away to another country? She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no lingering love, just emptiness. Ben asks about you. I said, he wants to know if you're coming home. What do you tell him? I tell him the truth, that his mother made some very bad choices and now she has to face the consequences. That actions have consequences, and people who hurt their families don't get to come home. He's my son too. No, I said, standing up. He was your son. Now he's just mine. You gave up the right to call him yours when you decided money was more important than family. I started to walk away, but Elena called out one last time. Nick, what about us? What about the 10 years we had together? I turned back to look at her through the plexiglass. What about them, Elena? Were any of those years real? Did you ever actually love me? Or was I just the cover story for your real life? She couldn't answer, and that told me everything I needed to know. As I walked out of the courthouse for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, peace. Elena had called me her sloppy seconds, but she was wrong. I wasn't anybody's second choice anymore. I was Ben's first choice, his only choice, and that was enough. 6 months later, Ben and I moved to a smaller house, in a better neighborhood. I'd sold the Woodland Hills house and most of Elena's belongings, keeping only a few photos for Ben when he got older. We started over, just the two of us. Ben joined Little League. I started dating again carefully with Ben's approval. We went to therapy together, learning how to be a family of two instead of three. One evening, as we were having dinner at our new kitchen table, Ben looked up from his homework. Dad, I know what sloppy seconds means now. My heart stopped. You do? Yeah, it means when someone settles for something they don't really want because they think they can't get anything better. Where did you learn that? My friend Jake's older brother explained it, but Dad? Yeah, buddy. You were never Mom's sloppy seconds. She was yours. You could have done way better. I looked at my 9-year-old son, this wise, resilient kid who'd survived his mother's betrayal and come out stronger, and I realized he was absolutely right. Elena had thought she was trading up, moving from her blue-collar husband to wealthy clients and easy money. But she'd actually traded down, from a man who loved her unconditionally to men who saw her as a commodity. She'd given up everything real for something fake, and now she was paying the price. As for me, I'd gotten exactly what I wanted: the truth, justice, and my son. And that was more than enough.